They never told you this part, did they? That the loudest noise in your life wouldn't come from outside, it would come from within. That your greatest distraction wouldn't be failure, it would be comparison. That the fastest way to lose yourself is to start watching everyone else. Because here's the truth, the moment you shift your eyes from your own path to someone else's lane, you start to drift, your momentum breaks, your focus fades, your power dilutes. And why? Because we've been conditioned to compare before we even learn to create. Before we ever knew who we were already trained to measure who we're not. He has more. She's doing better. They're ahead. I'm behind. This cycle is silent, but deadly. And it eats away at potential faster than failure ever could. So today I want you to wake up. Not physically. You're already walking, scrolling, working. But mentally, emotionally, spiritually, wake up to yourself. Comparison is one of the most subtle yet destructive forces that can take root in a person's mind. It creeps in quietly, often disguised as observation, motivation, or even inspiration, but its true nature is much more toxic. The moment you start measuring your life against someone else's, you begin to devalue your own journey. You stop appreciating your progress, your growth, and your timeline. Instead of focusing on who you're becoming, your attention shifts to who someone else already is, or who they appear to be. And that shift, as small as it may seem at first, begins to steal your energy, your confidence, and your momentum. What makes comparison so dangerous is how normalized it's become. From the time we're young, we're ranked, rated, and measured. Grades in school, likes on social media, job titles, salaries, achievements. It's all one big scoreboard. And it teaches us to look outward before we ever look inward. We learn to see our worth based on how we stack up against the next person. We start asking the wrong questions. Why are they ahead? Why do they have more? Why not me? These questions create a scarcity mindset where someone else's win feels like your loss. But life isn't a competition, and someone else's success does not mean your failure. Their timeline has nothing to do with your truth. The problem gets worse when we don't even realize we're doing it. We scroll through social media, watching carefully curated versions of people's lives, and we forget those are highlights, not reality. We compare our behind the scenes with their polished surface and feel like we're falling short. We see their accomplishments but not their sacrifices. We admire their glow but ignore the grind it took to get there. And in doing so, we set impossible standards for ourselves based on illusions. What we don't understand is that everyone is dealing with struggles we can't see, and nobody's path is as perfect as it looks. This mental trap becomes more powerful over time, slowly draining us of the very energy we need to build our own path. Comparison makes us hesitate. It makes us doubt our gifts. It paralyzes us with the idea that what we're doing is never enough. And that constant feeling of not measuring up leads to procrastination, resentment, and a loss of direction. Instead of taking action, we get stuck in a loop of watching others, analyzing their moves. Second, guessing our own potential. It's a silent form of self-sabotage, and most people don't even realize they're doing it. The truth is, comparison has no real value in your life. It doesn't help you grow. It doesn't bring clarity. It doesn't push you forward. In fact, it pulls you further from who you're meant to be. Every second you spend watching someone else's life is a second you're not building your own. Every ounce of energy you give to envy is energy you steal from your own progress. The more you compare, the more disconnected you become from your own voice, your own purpose, your own unique rhythm. And the more you do that, the more you drift into a version of yourself that's shaped by imitation instead of intention. When you allow comparison to take the driver's seat, you give away your power. You surrender your focus. You begin to live reactively instead of purposefully. Your self-worth becomes conditional, constantly shifting depending on what others are doing. And eventually, you lose sight of what truly matters: your own growth, your own peace, and your own evolution. Focus is one of the most powerful tools you have, yet it's often the most neglected. In a world that constantly pulls your attention in 100 directions, the ability to focus on yourself becomes a rare superpower. It's easy to get caught up in the noise, the opinions, the updates, the expectations, the trends. But when you make the decision to truly center your energy on your own growth, everything changes. You begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that were scattered. You start to build momentum in your own life instead of watching others build theirs. And most importantly, you start to live intentionally with clarity and control. There is a deep kind of freedom that comes from focus. Not the kind of freedom that comes from escape, but the kind that comes from ownership. When you focus on yourself, you're no longer waiting for permission to grow. You're no longer waiting for someone else to notice your potential or give you a green light. You begin to create your own path, driven by your own goals, values, and direction. You stop chasing things that aren't aligned with you, and you start attracting things that are. That's because focus creates alignment, and alignment creates peace. You're no longer at war with yourself, trying to be everything to everyone. You just become fully present in who you are and what you're here to do. Focus sharpens everything. It gives you clarity in a world that thrives on confusion. It helps you hear your own voice in a crowd of opinions, and it allows you to move forward with confidence, even when you're not sure of the outcome. When you're focused, you become immune to distractions, not because they disappear, but because they no longer hold power over you. You stop caring about what doesn't matter. You stop entertaining things that don't grow you. You stop giving time, energy, and thought to what drains you. Instead, you become deliberate with how you live, how you think, and how you show up. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes discipline. It takes self-awareness. It takes the courage to choose yourself over and over again, even when it's hard. Because focus is not about isolation or selfishness. It's about responsibility. It's recognizing that no one else can do the work for you. No one else can walk your path, heal your wounds, or build your vision. That's all on you. And once you realize that, focus stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like a lifeline. It becomes your way of taking control of your destiny. When you focus on yourself, you become deeply grounded. You're no longer swayed by trends or consumed by comparison. You're anchored in who you are and where you're going. And that kind of stability is rare. Most people live in reaction. They respond to life instead of creating it. But when you're focused, you create, you build, you lead, you elevate. And you do it from a place of wholeness, not desperation. You stop chasing validation and start living from your own standards. Distractions are endless, but focus is a choice. Every day, you decide what matters most. You decide where your energy goes. And wherever your focus flows, your life will follow. That's the unspoken truth most people miss. The quality of your life is directly tied to the quality of your focus. If you give your attention to chaos, your life becomes chaotic. If you give it to growth, your life begins to expand. The external world may stay noisy, but your internal world becomes clear, quiet, and powerful. You are not here to compete with anyone else. The real competition is not outside of you, it's within. The world often teaches you to chase, to race, to compare. It makes you believe that someone else's progress somehow diminishes your own. But the truth is, you are your only competition. The only person you need to be better than is the version of yourself from yesterday. That mindset changes everything. It shifts your focus from external validation to internal growth. It takes your energy away from envy and plants it firmly in evolution. Because when you realize that the race is with yourself, the pressure to outshine others disappears, and the drive to improve becomes pure. Many people live in constant comparison, always looking at someone else's life, thinking they're behind, thinking they should be doing more, thinking they need to catch up. But that's a false narrative. Your journey is unique. Your timing is different. Your challenges, your purpose, your experiences, they're not supposed to match anyone else's. And when you constantly look outward to define success, you miss the quiet but powerful progress you're already making. You ignore your own wins, you devalue your own growth. You become so obsessed with someone else's path that you start neglecting your own. That's the tragedy of comparison. It convinces you to run the wrong race. When you commit to being your own competition, something powerful happens. You start owning your growth. You stop waiting for others to fall behind so you can feel ahead. You stop needing to measure yourself by someone else's achievements. Instead, you begin measuring by effort, by improvement, by alignment. You start asking better questions. Am I better than I was last week? Did I show up for myself today? Am I doing the work I promised myself I would do? These questions ground you in progress, not perfection. They keep you moving forward with purpose, not pressure. Self-competition isn't about being hard on yourself. It's about being accountable to your highest potential. It means acknowledging that you have more in you and choosing to bring that more out each day. Not because someone else is watching, but because you refuse to settle. It's a mindset of ownership, a mentality of self-leadership, and it empowers you to set your own standards instead of living by someone else's definition of success. That's where true confidence comes from, not from being the best, but from being better. This perspective also frees you from the toxicity of ego. When you're focused on outgrowing yourself, you don't need to compete, prove, or dominate. You don't need to tear others down to lift yourself up. You're not looking sideways, you're looking inward. You celebrate others without comparing. You support others without feeling threatened. You admire others without losing yourself. Because you know who you are and you know where you're going. Your journey becomes deeply personal, rooted in purpose, and fueled by intentional growth. One of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is to stop chasing and start becoming. Stop competing and start improving. Progress over perfection, growth over approval, effort over ego. Every single day is a new opportunity to rise above who you were yesterday, to think better, to act better, to feel stronger. And that's where real power lies, not in being better than them, but in being better than the old you. That's a race worth running, one that leads to depth, discipline, and fulfillment. It's not about how fast you get there. It's about how real you become along the way, and the only way to win is to focus inward and rise higher than the person you used to be. One of the most damaging beliefs you can carry is the idea that you're behind in life, that somehow you're late to your own purpose, that you should have done more by now, or that others are ahead of you in ways that matter more. This illusion of being behind is rooted in comparison, but even more dangerously, it's tied to a false sense of time. We grow up conditioned to believe there's a fixed timeline for how life should unfold, when to graduate, when to get a job, when to succeed, when to settle down. But the truth is, there is no universal clock ticking over your head. Life doesn't operate on a standard schedule, and your value is not determined by how closely you follow someone else's timeline. Everyone's journey is unique. The lessons you're meant to learn, the experiences you're supposed to have, the breakthroughs you're destined for, they arrive when you are ready, not when someone else thinks you should be. You're not late. You're not missing out. You are simply in your season, learning what you need to learn, growing how you need to grow, and evolving at a pace that's tailored to your soul. Just because you can't see rapid results doesn't mean progress isn't happening. So much of your transformation is silent, invisible even to you, but it's real. And it's happening every time you choose patience over pressure, faith over fear, and self-trust over doubt. The idea that others are ahead of you is a distraction. What does ahead even mean? Everyone is dealing with different circumstances, different traumas, different responsibilities, and different starting points. Some people seem to be progressing quickly because they've already done internal work that you're just now beginning. Others may appear successful on the outside, but are battling chaos behind the scenes. You can't measure your progress accurately by using someone else's ruler. What's right for them might not be right for you. What looks like delay could actually be divine preparation. And what feels like stagnation might be a season of deep internal growth that will carry you further than quick external wins ever could. There is a kind of peace that comes when you stop rushing. When you stop panicking over where you should be and start trusting where you are. You begin to understand that not everything that blooms early lasts long. Some of the most powerful, long-lasting transformations happen slowly, like the roots of a tree growing deep before the branches ever appear above ground. You may not see the results today, but every small step, every bit of effort, every hard decision, and every silent act of self-discipline is building something strong beneath the surface. You are being shaped even when it feels like nothing is moving. The truth is, you'll never feel grounded if you keep thinking you're running out of time. That urgency often comes from watching others and believing they've figured it out while you haven't. But most people are figuring it out as they go, just like you. No one has it all together. And those who look like they do have simply learned to stop comparing, start focusing, and trust the process. That's the difference. Not luck, not perfection, but perspective, the willingness to accept their pace and build quietly in their own season. When you start to truly understand that you are exactly where you need to be for your own journey, a weight lifts. You stop chasing and you start creating. You stop performing and you start becoming. Life is not a sprint. It's not even a marathon. It's a path that's constantly unfolding, shaped by your choices, your mindset, and your ability to stay true to your path, even when others don't understand it. Focusing on yourself is not always exciting or instantly rewarding. It doesn't always come with applause or recognition. In fact, many times it's quiet, repetitive, and demanding. That's why discipline becomes the foundation of true transformation. Discipline is what carries you through on the days when motivation disappears. It's what keeps you going when no one is watching and no one is cheering. When you decide to focus on your growth, you must also decide to be consistent because growth only comes through repeated, intentional action. And that consistency is built through discipline. Day by day, choice by choice. Discipline teaches you how to delay gratification. It reminds you that not everything needs to happen right now. In a world addicted to instant results and quick fixes, discipline says, be patient, stay steady, keep working. It helps you build trust with yourself. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you do the hard thing instead of the easy one, every time you show up despite how you feel, you're proving to yourself that you can be relied on. That kind of self-trust is rare, and it only grows when you make discipline a part of who you are. Focusing on yourself through discipline doesn't mean your life becomes rigid or joyless. It simply means you live with intention. You choose long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. You choose the action that builds your future rather than the one that only serves your feelings in the moment. And that kind of focus creates strength, not just physical or mental strength, but emotional resilience and inner power. You begin to feel rooted. You begin to feel in control, not of every outcome, but of how you show up regardless of the outcome. Discipline also removes the need for external approval. When you're focused and committed, you no longer need others to validate your effort or acknowledge your progress. You become internally driven. You start to value your quiet progress over loud performance. You realize that true success isn't about being seen, it's about being stable. And stability only comes through daily, disciplined habits. You stop caring if the world claps for you because you're proud of the work you're doing in the dark. You're becoming someone you can respect, someone you can count on, someone you're no longer trying to escape from. The more you develop discipline, The more you step into your next level identity, you start doing things you once thought were out of reach. You handle responsibilities you used to avoid. You say no to distractions that once controlled you. This shift is powerful because it's not just about what you do, it's about who you're becoming. Every disciplined action reinforces the belief that you are capable, worthy, and destined for more. You stop breaking promises to yourself and you start keeping them. That's what creates self-respect. And self-respect changes how you move, how you think, how you speak, and how you treat yourself. There's a kind of silent transformation that comes when you focus and discipline yourself. It doesn't always look exciting from the outside, but it's powerful on the inside. You begin to shed old identities. You outgrow habits that no longer serve you. You stop waiting for life to change and start becoming the change. This isn't something that happens once. It happens daily in the choices you make, in the standards you raise, and in the actions you repeat. Discipline isn't just a skill, it's a form of self-love. It's the quiet declaration that you are worth the effort, worth the sacrifice, and worth the work it takes to become your best self. Your inner world is the foundation of everything you experience in your outer life. The thoughts you think, the beliefs you hold, the emotions you carry, these shape the way you see the world, how you respond to challenges, how you treat others, and what you believe you're capable of. When your inner world is chaotic, unhealed, or unclear, it shows up in your actions, your relationships, and your results. No matter how much you try to fix the outside, nothing truly shifts until you address what's going on within. That's why focusing on yourself begins with building your inner world. Most people try to fix their lives from the outside in. They change jobs, chase money, switch relationships, buy new things, or distract themselves with temporary highs. But even after making all these changes, they still feel stuck, empty, or unfulfilled. That's because they're working on symptoms instead of causes. Real change doesn't begin with your environment. It begins with your mindset. It begins with how you think about yourself, how you speak to yourself, and how you view your value. When your internal reality is rooted in clarity, confidence, and purpose, your external reality starts to align. You start making better choices. You attract healthier people. You pursue goals that truly matter to you. Your inner world is where your peace lives. It's where your confidence grows. It's where your decisions are born. If you neglect it, everything else becomes unstable. You'll find yourself constantly reacting to life instead of responding with intention. You'll feel pulled in 100 directions, influenced by every voice but your own. But when you focus inward and begin to strengthen your sense of self, you become grounded. You're no longer tossed around by opinions, setbacks, or superficial pressure. You operate from a deeper place of knowing and direction. That kind of strength doesn't come from trying to control everything outside of you. It comes from mastering what's inside of you. Building your inner world also means healing. It means being honest about the wounds you've been carrying, the limiting beliefs you've adopted, and the fears that are quietly shaping your actions. Healing doesn't mean pretending everything is okay. It means doing the difficult, vulnerable work of facing your own truth. That's where freedom is found. Because as long as you're avoiding your pain, it's controlling you from the shadows. But when you face it, you begin to release it. You begin to take back your energy, your voice, your power, and you create space for real growth. Self-awareness is a key part of building your inner world. You can't change what you don't understand. When you take time to reflect, to ask yourself hard questions, to notice your patterns and emotions without judgment, you begin to gain insight. That insight helps you make better decisions. You begin to notice when you're triggered, when you're repeating old habits, or when you're living out someone else's expectations instead of your own truth. Awareness leads to understanding, and understanding leads to change. This is how you evolve, not just in what you do, but in who you are. The strongest people aren't those who always look perfect on the outside. They're the ones who have done the inner work. They've faced their shadows. They've built discipline. They've taken responsibility for their lives instead of blaming others. And as a result, they live with authenticity. They move with intention. They radiate a quiet confidence that can't be faked because it's rooted in truth. That's the gift of focusing on your inner world. You stop looking for peace, love, or validation outside of yourself because you've already built it within. And once you've done that, no one can take it away from you.